Here's the bombshell that nobody expected. OpenAI just proposed giving away 5% of its entire company to the United States government. No strings attached. And I'm not talking about a small donation here. I'm talking about 5% of OpenAI itself going straight to a sovereign wealth fund that would be owned by every American taxpayer. Based on OpenAI's last valuation of around $150 billion. That's roughly $7.5 billion in equity, just handed over for free. Think about that for a second. OpenAI is voluntarily reducing its own shareholders' stake in the company by 5%. That's a genuinely enormous amount of money moving from private hands to public ownership. This isn't your typical corporate charity or tax write-off. This is a company with godlike influence over the future of AI, deciding to give the American people a direct ownership stake in its business. But here's the thing, OpenAI isn't doing this out of the kindness of Sam Altman's heart. There's a calculated reason behind this move. The company faces mounting pressure about AI regulation, government oversight, and the basic question of whether one private company should control the most powerful technology on Earth. By giving the government a direct financial stake in OpenAI's success, the company is essentially trying to align everyone's interests. Here's what's actually happening behind the headlines and why this move is way more complicated than it looks on the surface. So why would one of the most valuable AI companies on the planet decide to hand over billions in equity to the government? The answer has everything to do with the explosive growth of AI and the growing panic about who should actually control it. Over the past year, there's been a tectonic change in how Washington thinks about artificial intelligence. Senators and congresspeople who barely understood what AI was 2 years ago are now holding hearings and writing regulation. Everyone from the Biden administration to the Federal Trade Commission has started asking hard questions about whether private companies should have this much power over such a transformative technology. OpenAI sits right at the center of this storm. ChatGPT brought AI into 100 million homes in just 3 months. GPT-4 is being used by governments, hospitals, and military contractors. The stakes feel existential, not just for OpenAI, but for every country trying to figure out how to govern something this powerful. And here's the tension: OpenAI is a private company. Its shareholders own it. The board decides its direction. But the technology it builds affects billions of people. It shapes what information people see, how governments make decisions, how wars might be fought in the future. By proposing to hand over 5% to the American public, OpenAI is basically saying, you deserve a seat at this table. Okay, so what exactly is a sovereign wealth fund, and why does it matter that OpenAI's equity is going into one? A sovereign wealth fund is basically a government-owned investment fund. Instead of a private investor or a company owning an asset, a nation's government owns it, and theoretically, the people own it through the government. Norway has the most famous sovereign wealth fund in the world. They own oil, stocks, real estate, all kinds of assets. The fund is worth over $1 trillion. That's one nation's wealth being managed on behalf of its citizens. Now imagine the United States setting up a sovereign wealth fund, and the first major asset it controls is 5% of OpenAI, the company that's defining the entire future of artificial intelligence. That's the magnitude of what's being proposed here. Here's the genius from OpenAI's perspective. By putting government ownership into the fund, Sam Altman and his board are solving multiple problems at once. The government gets to feel like it has a voice in AI governance. American taxpayers technically own part of OpenAI, but OpenAI still controls the company day-to-day. And whenever Washington starts talking about breaking up big tech or regulating AI heavily, OpenAI can point to the sovereign wealth fund and say, look, we already gave the public a stake. It's a political masterstroke. If it works. So here's what happens next if this deal actually closes. Let's say the United States government accepts OpenAI's offer and sets up a sovereign wealth fund. The American public now owns 5% of OpenAI. That means as OpenAI grows, and it will keep growing because it's absolutely dominating the AI market right now, that 5% stake grows in value too. If OpenAI doubles in value, that 5% is now worth $14 billion instead of 7.5 billion. The American people have just been handed a long-term investment in the company that's winning the AI race. But here's what most people miss about this deal: it's not passive wealth. Once the government owns 5% of OpenAI, they get to see inside the company. They get board representation. They get access to financial records, product roadmaps, safety protocols. This is the kind of visibility that every tech regulator in the world has been screaming for. Right now, we don't actually know what happens when you combine cutting-edge AI models with military applications. We don't know if ChatGPT's training methods are safe. We don't know what OpenAI's next move is. But if the United States government owns 5%, they get to know. And that's both powerful and terrifying. This move is wild when you compare it to literally every other big tech company. Apple doesn't offer the government a stake in the iPhone division. Microsoft didn't hand over Windows to the public. Google didn't make the United States co-owner of Android. OpenAI is doing the complete opposite. Why? Because OpenAI has something these other companies don't: a technology so powerful and so unpredictable that even the people running the company seem nervous about it. Sam Altman himself has said multiple times that GPT-5 could be dangerous if released irresponsibly. He's warned about existential risks from advanced AI. The whole leadership team is basically saying, we built something bigger than us, and we need outside eyes on it. Compare that to Steve Jobs, who was obsessed with controlling every detail of Apple, or Satya Nadella at Microsoft, who views Windows and Azure as fundamental to Microsoft's power. These CEOs see technology as something to protect and control. Sam Altman seems to be saying something different, that the most advanced AI on Earth is too important to be owned by any single group, even the brilliant people who built it. That's a philosophical change that ripples through everything. So if this deal happens, what actually changes? First, there's the immediate political signal it sends. Every country on Earth is watching how the United States handles AI. China is pouring billions into AI development and doesn't have the same regulatory constraints. Europe's already passing the AI Act, which regulates companies aggressively. By taking a public stake in the world's most advanced AI company, the United States government is basically saying, we're not going to ban this technology, we're going to own a piece of it. That's actually pretty clever geopolitical strategy. Instead of banning AI research like some countries might, the United States is saying, make it with us, and we'll profit from your success. But here's where it gets complicated. OpenAI's move also changes the entire conversation about AI regulation. If the government owns 5%, can they still regulate the company fairly, or does the conflict of interest run too deep? It's like asking the FDA to regulate a company the government owns stock in. The incentives get really weird. The government now profits if OpenAI succeeds, which means they might be less likely to crack down if something goes wrong. And something will eventually go wrong. Okay, so here's what you actually need to pay attention to over the next few months. First, will Congress even approve this? It's not a given. There are plenty of lawmakers who think the government shouldn't be making investments like this, especially in cutting-edge AI. Some think it doesn't go far enough, that the government should take a controlling stake, not just 5%. Others think OpenAI is just trying to avoid real regulation by throwing a shiny object at Washington. So watch for the hearings. This is the kind of thing that will definitely trigger Senate and House testimony from Sam Altman and others. Second, keep an eye on what happens to OpenAI's competitors. If OpenAI gets government backing, will DeepSeek or Mistral or other companies feel like they're being disadvantaged? Will they demand government investment too? This could trigger a completely new wave of government tech investment that we haven't seen since the early days of the internet. And third, watch for what kind of board seat this actually gives the government. That's where the real power lies. If the government gets genuine influence over safety protocols, product release decisions, and research direction, this deal changes everything about how AI is developed in the United States. Those are the three things to track. Here's what you need to take away from all of this. OpenAI just made a move that fundamentally redefines what it means to be a private company in the age of artificial intelligence. By voluntarily handing over 5% of itself to the American public, they are saying something really important. The most powerful technology in the world shouldn't be owned by any single group of people. That's either incredibly wise or incredibly clever, depending on how you look at it. Wise because AI really is that powerful and that important. Clever because it solves OpenAI's biggest political problem before it becomes a crisis. Either way, this is a watershed moment. The next few months will tell us whether this works. Will Congress approve it? Will other countries copy it? Will this actually lead to better AI governance? Or will it just make people feel better about OpenAI's power while the company operates exactly the same way? The answer to those questions will shape how AI is governed globally for the next decade. And that's not hyperbole, it's just the reality of how influential this one company has become. So follow for daily AI news and make sure you're tracking what happens next with OpenAI, Congress, and the future of artificial intelligence. The decisions being made right now will affect your job, your privacy, and how you interact with technology for the rest of your life.